Just a few days ago, I saw a very interesting ad on social media for Stanley Cup accessories. Now, by the time you finish putting these accessories on your cup ended up being, and this now includes your drink, 3 or 4 times heavier than before. I'm talking accessories like a little pouch to put your phone in, and then another pouch also that hangs on the cup that puts all of your bank cards in there, your gym card, all those types of cards. And then also there was a part of the accessories where you could hang little keychains that look really cute for your apartment keys or your car keys. And then also, this was probably the interesting part for me. There was a little goodie that you could put at the top of your Stanley Cup that opens up so that you could put snacks on there for a party or a gathering. If people all of a sudden felt like they wanted snacks, you can just snap this open, plug it onto your cup, and then put a range of different snacks in there. It was like a tray. You know, you have those trays where you can put one form of snack in there and then put your gummies in there and different types of snacks. So by the time you finished, or they stepped back in the ad from this cup, it was looking so excessive, but it really made me think about how so many of the things we now see on social media, so much of what we have been accustomed to or conditioned or socialized to see and to believe about consuming and buying and having things or spending on things, really makes us challenge or relook at what we were taught. And so often the funny thing about consumerism is we almost don't know where we end and it begins. We sort of start to think that the consumerism is us, or how we've been conditioned to behave, to buy, to spend, to consume. And today's episode is about exactly that. We're not talking about Stanley Cups, but we're talking about happiness beyond the things, beyond what we buy, beyond consumption, and how you and I can start to unlearn the idea of consumption and realize that we don't actually need all the stuff. But if we feel like we do, then maybe it's an opportunity for us to unlearn and relearn. Welcome to the Unlearners podcast. The Unlearners. Learn, change, grow. Learn, change, grow. The Unlearners. The Unlearners. The Unlearners. Learn, change, grow. So the idea around the Stanley Cup was a very interesting one to start off with, because it makes us think about how relative it is to perceive consumerism. And this is the thing, and I know that this is probably the conversation that you might be having in your head as you hear this, as you listen to the intro, is Zanele, but all of those things are necessary, or all of those things are subjective. I might want them, maybe another person doesn't, and that's perfectly fine. How about we let everyone just sit in their version of normalcy? And I can definitely understand that. There's definitely room for that. So this particular conversation that we're having today is a conversation for you and I who wish to expand or self-introspect or raise our levels of awareness when it comes to consumerism, when it comes to things and purchasing and buying habits and our motivations around having things. And then also the biggest part of it is the relationship that we've created between the things and our happiness. Because what often starts to happen is that the two end up being so deeply intertwined. The things, the Stanley Cups and the accessories that go with the cups and everything material ends up getting so intertwined with our perceived idea of happiness that we almost don't know where one ends and we begin, or the other begins. Can we truly be satisfied and at peace and content without some of the things? Do the things really mean happiness? Or also, what role do they play in that? So I really want to tap into that conversation and talk about the association that's happening there. And I think that's a really great place for us to start, is thinking about the association we've created. So I'd like you to maybe just go into your head for a few seconds and look around. Look around at the things that you have around you, whether you're sitting maybe in the office, or you're sitting at home, or you're sitting in your home office, maybe you're in the car, wherever it is that you are. I'd like you to just take a look around at the things that you have accumulated. And I use the word accumulated very intentionally here. So have a look around, and I'm looking around here. I see beautiful cushions that I bought. I see a gorgeous painting of the ocean that I got. Really, really love that piece. I see a house plant that I got. I call her Twirly. So Twirly's up in the background here, also listening to the podcast, and a few other things that I think about. But as you look at all those things, I really want you to start to ask yourself, what is the association between you, your personality, your beliefs, your conditioning, and that thing? So I'll give you a really quick example. So Twirly, who I spoke about just a little bit earlier on, my beautiful plant. So Twirly's in the background here, and I definitely got Twirly because I wanted this space, the specific space that I'm in right now, to have a touch of nature. Not just that, but I want to also have an opportunity to look after something or someone, because that's important to me. So that's why I got Twirly. But if I think about whether I had to, and the need that Twirly fulfills in my life, it really makes me think about a purchasing decision. Now, let me take you a few steps back, and I'd really like you to keep those objects in your surrounds, maybe outside in your garage, whatever it is, in mind as we go through the rest of this. Now, I'd like to just reflect really, really quickly as we think about some of the things that do motivate our purchasing decisions, whether it's because we really want to look after a plant, maybe because we're not allowed to have a dog for some reason, or we don't have any children, or whatever it is. Really thinking about our motivations that are behind some of our purchasing decisions. Now, I'm going to just pull really quickly on Jodie Shaw's article. She wrote a very interesting article that I loved as part of Cadence International. And she says that consumer behavior needs us to really understand that when we buy because of key psychological factors. And she mentions 4 of them. So I want to just go through these. And as you think about the items that are around you, run them through this checklist. So the very first one is motivations. Motivations really encompasses consumer choices that are driven by underlying motivations that are like status, your need to belong, your need for self-expression, and then convenience. So these key motivations are one of the buckets that really influence how we buy. And she even quotes in the article that according to Harvard Business Review, emotional motivators are twice as powerful as rational motivators when it comes to driving our consumer decision making. So motivations like emotions really, really drive how we buy or what we buy. And if you think about your emotions, a lot of them are deeply tied to conditionings, to experiences that you haven't healed, unlearnings that still need to happen, compulsive behaviors. So let's go back to some of the headings that she used under motivation. So the need for status. Think about how maybe items like having the best chandelier somewhere in the middle of your property is attached to your need for status. And then think about how maybe certain ideas around having a bigger couch in your home that is fluffier, that people sit there and they will never want to leave, is tied to your need for belonging, to have people around you, to be surrounded by others, your need to feel safe. And then how other purchasing decisions are driven by things like self-expression and even the need for convenience. I'm going to be extremely honest here and say that convenience is a big motivator for me behind why I buy things. But when I double click into that, I'm able to understand that my need for convenience as a motivator for taking money out of my wallet comes from my extremely busy and occupied lifestyle. But also I'm just not a busy by design type of person. I'm not busy, for example, in the kitchen. I'm not a huge cook or chef. And so with me, convenience becomes a high motivating factor behind why I buy the things I buy or why I consume what I consume. So that's the first label that she uses in the article, is motivations. Really think about what is your motivator behind buying what you've bought, or having what you have in your space as you look around, or even because consumption or consuming and buying is not just about the things we have in our surroundings, but it's when we leave the house. What pulls your eye when you watch the television or you watch TV? What pulls your eyes and your attention then as well? So really think about your motivations. The second one, very closely tied to that first one, are emotions. We mentioned that there is those insights from Harvard Business Review that says, a study by Harvard Business Review that says that our emotional motivators are twice as powerful as rational motivators for why something makes sense. So you've got a higher chance of buying something because it triggers a particular emotion in you, whether that's the need to feel safe, the need to feel like you belong, the need for status and to be a person who's deeply respected or revered, whatever it is. In that context will drive you a lot more than a rational need, like I need this item in my house because if I don't have it now, I might starve for the next few weeks, or whatever it is. Those emotional motivators are extremely powerful. So the second out of the four then is emotions. Emotions, according to the article, significantly influence our behavior as consumers, what we buy, what we don't buy. And also even, and this is the funny thing about emotions, and I really want you to hear this because this is where sometimes our biggest unlearnings behind consumerism and associating things with happiness comes in. He even says that our emotions will impact brand perception. So they're a big part, they're entangled in our brand perception. Let me just pause here because this is really, really juicy. Think about some of the brands that you see as you look around. So for example, just take another look around, but this time as you look around the space, notice the brands that you are surrounded by. So I'm looking around as well and I'm seeing brands that I really, really appreciate, maybe because of their quality. I'm seeing brands that I really respect, maybe because they have a really well-loved name generally. But now go a little step further than that and think about the emotion that triggers. So for example, if you are buying a brand that was recommended to you by a friend, by a colleague, notice what the driving emotion there was. What was the emotion that drove that purchasing decision or that feeling or perception around that brand? So for example, one of the brands that I have, and I won't name them, but it's a particular brand, very, very niched, home furniture, home goodies. And that's where I bought my painting. That's where I bought the scent for this particular space that I'm sitting in. And it's extremely niche. It's really, really so it's just stunning stuff. But if I think about it now, the reason why I bought those is because there is a level of status that's associated with this particular brand. It isn't necessarily one of those that's all over the place. It is very niche. It is very specialized. But as I have this conversation with you, I'm realizing that behind that brand perception that I have, there is a need for status there. There is that idea that if I buy this brand, then I am this person. And I want to just take 2 seconds here to share with you a particular activity that I do with coaching clients, or that we do with coaching clients at the Unlearners, is being able to separate who you are, the things you do, and in this case, the things you buy, from each other. Because often what we do is we take the things we buy and we overlap them to mean this is who I am as a result. So for example, if I buy that Mercedes something, and don't know all the cars really well. If I buy this Mercedes, then it means this about me. But the big work or the big unlearning here for us, especially when it comes to this episode, and this is really the crux, so I really want you to hear this, is that who you are falls in a different column from what you buy and what happens. Those are three different things. You are you, a beautiful, highly valuable human being, soul. You can use whatever word resonates with you there. But the things you buy, whether you have the money to buy them, how consistently you can buy them, how they make you look around other people, how they make you feel, is completely different from who you are. Those two things are different. They are just incomparable because they are two different things. But often what we do is we take the things that we buy, we take the brands we surround ourselves with, and we make them mean something about us. And remember, I used the word association earlier on. There's an association that starts to happen there. So that's the second big psychological factor that motivates consumer behavior. Third one is social influence. And this one is a really big one. Social influence. We talked a little bit earlier on about how you might have bought into a particular brand, maybe because a friend recommended it, or maybe because your cousin works for that brand. So they ended up, giving free samples to everyone, and you went, oh goodness, now I need to support them because my cousin works there, or wow, this is actually a really good brand and my cousin works there. So all sorts of things like that influence that particular that is an influence for those buying behaviors that you then start to carry out over time. So according to the article, consumers are influenced by the people around them. And research even shows that 92% of consumers trust recommendations from friends and family over other forms of advertising. So you have got a much higher chance of buying something because someone else that you trust, and this is probably what should have been added into this conversation, that you trust, and this is actually what it does say, I just had another look at it, that you trust because they recommended that thing. So not because it actually works really well, or it helps you, maybe it's the more economic choice in this particular instance, or it gets you to work a lot faster and it's better for the environment. It doesn't matter. But if a family member or a colleague or someone that you deeply trust has recommended it to you, that has a huge chance to influence your buying behaviors, to influence how you consume, what you consume, when you consume it, or even how you consume it. So that's really, really important. And that's why we see factors like social proof and even influencer marketing doing extremely well, is because we've really realized as a society, and consumer insights and behavior and data around how we buy really is pointing to recommendations as being a key driver behind why we buy what we buy. Now, I'd really like you on this third point to think. Now, as you look around, I'd like you in each of the items that you see to dig deep and understand who the person was that was part of that decision. Now, here's where this gets really, really good. I'm not talking about the person who said, hey, go buy that plant. That plant looks really good and you would definitely like it. It would look really great in your apartment or in that room. I'm not talking about that. And definitely we can include that as a primary social influence. But I'd like you to dig a little bit deeper than that. I'd like you to think about all of the other people, all of the other platforms, all of the other social influences that played a role in you getting to that point. Because every buying decision comes from thousands of steps that led that particular thing. And here's what I mean by that. If I am getting twirly, or my beautiful plant, into this particular space, it is because I have a belief, and probably this is where we should have gone first. I have a belief that is driving that particular decision around the particular product that I'm getting. And the belief in my case is that plants add a beautiful touch to a property, that plants are alive, that as someone who does occupy this particular room alone when I record my podcast, I'd love to have a plant to look at and feel like there's another energy in this room. So there's a few different things there that are based on beliefs. And can you see how a social influence is not necessarily the gentleman or the person that was at the store when I walked in and I went, hey, I'm looking for a plant that I resonate with. It's not necessarily that guy. It's each and every podcast that I listen to, conversation with a parent, conversation at work or whatever it was, that reinforced the belief that plants were great in a space. And so that's how deep social influence goes. And most of us never do the work of going into understanding some of the social influences behind what we buy. You're buying that gorgeous, going right back to the idea of the Mercedes, you're buying that gorgeous Mercedes because there's a belief there. There's a belief about a certain kind of brand, which is the Mercedes brand. Maybe that's been created by the constant advertising you've been doing. But also maybe when you grew up, your grandfather had a Mercedes and maybe he was the wealthier person in your family, or maybe your mother and your sister, were the only people in your family. And because you didn't grow up with too much money or enough money, it became a real constraint for you. And you went, oh my goodness, one day I'm definitely going to get a Mercedes to prove to myself that I'm someone who can succeed, or whatever word you might have used. And so there's deep social influence there through our beliefs that happens behind every buying decision. So remember, when you buy something, it's not because of the ad, it's not because of the person that was sitting in the store when you came in there and they made a recommendation. When the person spoke to you, the reason why that buying decision was made is because it triggered a belief in you. You are only buying the security system because you have a belief inside yourself about what it means to be secure, about what it means to be safe, especially in the environment that you are currently in. Every single thing that you buy, there is deep social influence there that is not just about the person who sold it to you or the person who recommended it, but it goes as deep as the 1,000 times that a belief was reinforced in you that buying decision needed to be made. All right. Definitely my favorites, as you can hear. And the last one then out of the four is cognitive biases, very closely linked once again to social influence. But according to the article, consumers are subject to cognitive biases. These are mental shortcuts that impact our decision-making process. So things like the anchoring effect, for example, will show how our perception of a price is influenced by the initial price point that we encountered. So for example, if you say to me, this used to be $3.99, but now it's $2.99. So I'm going, oh wow, this particular product must be worth spending money on because it's a lot less than what it used to be. I need to get it now. So there's that aspect of scarcity that's come in as well, that then triggers me as a social being to go, let me jump in and make sure I buy now. So all of those cognitive biases are really juicy, and we could spend all day on those and looking into all of them, but they are biases that then influence how our brands and marketers leverage language in order to get us to make buying decisions. Or maybe they even use pricing psychology, for example, to help us to lean towards, or to nudge us rather, to lean towards certain prices rather than others. So there's definitely a lot that's going on there that's influencing how you and I make our buying decisions. Now, I want you to sort of pull your eyes back from your environments and the things you are looking at within your environment now, and think about those motivations. Now, those motivations came in various forms. It was motivations themselves, so things like status, belonging, self-expression. Our emotions was a very big one. Social influence that we realized actually goes a lot deeper than just someone recommending something to you. And the last one was cognitive biases. Now that we know that there are a range of different motivations that are behind each and every buying decision that we have, I would like to share with you the following as we get a little bit practical, and I'll share with you 3 strategies that you can apply now as you unlearn or reframe the relationship between things and happiness, or things and contentment, because the two don't necessarily have to be to coexist per se. They can't be mutually exclusive. You don't have to have the things to be content, but contentment or happiness is what you define it to be. And this is the thing, this is a huge debate and huge conversation. We could go all day around this, but the big idea is you really want to be very, very clear on what that means to you. How do you know you are happy? And often it's associated with a sense of peace. It's associated with a sense of contentment that isn't tied to other things, because the things around us are consistently changing. Your happiness cannot be defined by them. It cannot be defined by whether, you have a beautiful car to go to work in, because tomorrow something could happen to that beautiful car. Does that mean you're no longer happy? So we need to almost redefine just the idea of happiness on its own, but that's not what this episode is about. The key thing here is just to be really clear that contentment is not associated, does not have to be associated with that. We've just been conditioned or socialized in a high consumerist culture to think that we need the things, or we need the to be surrounded by this aesthetic beauty, or whatever we choose to call it at the time, in order for us to truly be fulfilled, to truly be content. So this really, really matters, because in an age of over-consumerism or over-consumption that we live in, we're seeking to really build lives of meaning. Many of us are no longer doing the drudgery for the sake of it. Most of us are going back to realigning with purpose, to realigning with meaning, and thinking about why things matter. Why do we do the things we do? Why is this really important work? And so we really want to now share with you some tools and a little bit of inspiration here and there to help you redefine this idea of success and happiness beyond consumerism and consumption and the things that we absolutely adore, and help to make life really convenient and easy and livable, right, on this planet. So 3 key things. Here's what you can do and how you can get a little bit practical about this. The first one is understand why you buy. And this is exactly what we've already done at the start of this episode. I ran you through those 4 key psychological factors that influence your behavior as a consumer. And you want to start here. Know why you buy. Know, be very, very clear. Increase your level of self-awareness around why you buy. So next time you take your beautiful, hard-earned, cold hard cash out of your pocket, or you take your credit card, or you take your we don't write checks anymore, it's 2024, but when you okay, some of us do still write checks, but when you take your money out of your pocket, why? Know what the psychological influence, the social influence, have been, what the emotional influences have been, what the motivations have been. Don't be the person who finds themselves making a buying decision, but you cannot track where it came from, or how they got you, or what led to it. Even if it means understanding that, oh my goodness, I'm buying because of an emotional reaction. I'm buying as an emotional reaction to something that happened 6 years ago, and I want to be safe, so I'm making this decision. It doesn't matter. For now, just raise your level of awareness. Know why you buy. Know why you always order that type of purchase, or that type of product, or that type of service, instead of the one that costs less, or instead of the one that costs more. Why? Why do you do it? Most of us just go through life and we just sort of exist, and we rarely ever raise our levels of awareness around why we do the things we do. So start there. Understand why you buy. What's driving your buying decisions? And maybe this is an opportunity to go back to your bank statements, to go back to your account and have a look at, what am I buying? What am I spending most of my money on? And what is this showing me is important to me? But also, what is this showing me I have associated consumption with. So if I think about the things that I'm buying, what is the association there between those things and me, or my happiness, or my contentment, or me as an individual, my personality, my being, and who I am? So that's step number one. Understand why you buy. Have you ever been to one of those retreats that when you come back, you feel like, oh my goodness, I'm a different person? Well, the unlearning experience is exactly one of those. Because if you go to the unlearning experience, you're not just experiencing a transformation retreat. You are literally taking 3 beautiful days, gifting them to yourself all the way from Friday up until Sunday, experiencing master classes that are powerful, workshops that will engage you. You are creating your journey and purpose for the coming year, taking stock of the year you are closing off. If you're someone who's transforming, the unlearning experience is for you. It's one of those retreats, and I'm not just saying this. This is the feedback we've received from previous retreat attendees, that the unlearning experience is life-changing. And so if you're ready for life-changing kinds of results, you're going to make sure you've got your ticket to the unlearning experience. Second is clarify your priorities. The reason why clarify your priorities is really important is because it gives you an opportunity to realign what you buy with what you feel is important. So for example, if right now it's 2024 to date this episode, and for me right now, health is extremely important. If that's really important to me right now, then I get to write down my 3 key priorities for the year, put them down. Maybe for me this year, it might be health. Second, it might be scaling my business. And then third, maybe it's building stronger, more meaningful relationships. If those 3 key things are important to me, I'd to your statement, go back to your bank account and see if you are spending in correlation to the things you say are priority or you say are important to you. Because otherwise, all you are doing is you are buying just for the sake of it. You are buying on autopilot according to socialized ways of being. You're buying according to your emotions. You're just spending because you saw an ad that triggered you because of something that happened 18 years ago. Make sure you're clear on your priorities. Step number 2, clarify your priorities and then spend accordingly. Spend accordingly so that you are consistently driving what you want to drive as an individual that's trying to make the kind of impact you are trying to make. Reorganize, reimagine, reposition yourself, because otherwise you'll find yourself in a space where your priorities haven't moved, but you've been spending all of this money. And the two are just not speaking to each other. So go right back. If you want to really make a beautiful influence in the world, you want to impact maybe how refugees are treated in your country, or you really want to influence the stats around child pornography in your area, then spend accordingly. Spend accordingly. Allow the emotions within that, or the social influence within that, to be the psychological factor that drives your purchasing decision, so that when you look back on your priorities at the end of the year, at the end of 5 years, at the end of your life, you can see how you've used bartering in the money sense here on this planet in order to drive what's important to you. Right, so that's the second one. Really, really powerful. So first thing was understand why you buy, what drives your purchasing decisions. And then second is clarify your priorities. And this is also really realign your priorities to your bank account, realign your priorities with your bank statement, and make sure you're spending to drive the impact that you want to make as an individual, as a business, as a team, regardless. And then the very last one is live for you. Really, really important one. I really like this one. One of the things I often say to teams when I either deliver a keynote or a workshop is human beings are not necessarily selfish, but we are motivated by our need to keep ourselves safe. So you and I are always thinking about number one, day in and day out, thinking about how we can keep ourselves safe, how we can secure ourselves. And so that means that as you go through life, you really want to make sure that you're looking after yourself. Live for you. The intention here is to help us understand that People buy for different reasons, and it's so easy to take why we buy and the decision we've made and the fact that I'm on a new journey, and then we take that and we point fingers at other people and we go, no, but you're not supposed to spend like that because this is what happened to me and this is what I found. Allow other people to be on their own journeys around disassociating happiness from things, from consumerism. And if you feel they are not doing that, let them go. Live for you. Be on your journey. Focus on your journey. The best way to teach anyone anything is through example. And if people are inspired by your example, they are going to make a longer lasting change. Remember the data that people are more likely to buy anything if it's recommended by someone they trust. So if you have these people around you that trust you, do you reimagine your relationship to consumerism, disassociate what consumerism is from who you are, and then people will see that example. Don't try to change how people spend or influence and be assertive in terms of really influencing how people spend what they spend. You can give advice, especially if someone trusts you, it might land really well, but really put your own mask on first, I think is what I'm saying here. Live for you, focus on your journey. If you've made a decision, no, it's not the same decision other people have made. Don't fall into the trap of thinking that the way you believe the world to be is the way it actually is. That is only through your perception. That's what's called false consensus bias, is thinking that the view you have of the world is the view that everyone has. So live for you first. Work on your journey. Do your own relearning and unlearning, and then people will see those beautiful results that you've attained and then work from there. So let's revise those 3 key steps around disassociating things with us and who we are and happiness and contentment, because the things are not your happiness. And so what do? The first is we understand why we buy. Be on your own journey to understand the big drivers, psychological drivers especially, behind your personal buying decisions. What is driving you when you take your precious money out of your pocket? And then the second one is clarify your priorities. Know what's important to you and then realign your spending to that. So by the end of the year, or by the end of 5 years, or by the end of your life, you know that you have driven the impact that you wanted to make by using the money that you had during your time. And then the very last one is live for you. Focus in on your own journey. Do your own work. Heal your own consistent behavioral patterns. Heal yourself, do your own work, and then allow the results to show for themselves instead of being assertive towards others around how they should spend or how they should see consumerism. Just do you and allow other people to do the exact same. All right, Unlearner, that was this episode, Happiness Beyond Stuff and Unlearning Consumption. And whether this for you means minimalism, whether it just means away with the things, I'm just going to go barefoot, sit on a mountain for a good few years, it doesn't matter. Whatever it means to you, I hope that you've taken one key thing out of this episode and you have at least raise your level of awareness around the association you place between who you are and the things you have, because those two are not the same. I wish you all of the reimagination that is necessary for you on your journey around this episode, sending you lots and lots of hugs. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Unlearners podcast. If you are on a journey of reimagining and transformation and transitioning as an individual, come and join us at the Unlearning Experience, our annual retreat. We can't wait to welcome you there. And the retreat happens every single year in November, and we can't wait to see you and hold space for you if you are someone who is reimagining what it means to be who you are. All right, Unlearner, thanks for listening to this episode. Bye for now. The Unlearners. Learn, change, grow.